It's game time. It's the first quarter. We start with what had the potential to be a banner year for the Indiana Fever. We go back to this past offseason. It was very clear and very obvious with the moves that the Fever made in the offseason that they were pushing all of their chips into the middle for a championship. That they looked at their young stars in Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. They acknowledged that they didn't have that veteran championship presence. They went out, added Sydney Colson and Sophie Cunningham and DeWanna Bonner. Now DeWanna Bonner no longer in Indiana, but it was still a very clear and obvious and strategic move that the Fever was making this past season of identifying roster deficiencies or maybe holes in the roster and plugging those holes in the roster. But now injury after injury after injury. Sophie Cunningham is the recent one. She suffered a knee injury. Ari McDonald, Sydney Colson, Caitlin Clark's availability is up in the air. Cass, are we getting to the point where we need to really reevaluate how we view this Indiana Fever team?
I can't think of another team that has their hopes have fallen apart this quickly and seemingly out of their control. The one thing about winning a championship that we don't talk enough about, I think, in regularity is there has to be a bit of luck involved. No champion in anything has ever won without a little bit of luck, injury luck, luck in the schedule, like whatever. The Fever don't have any luck, it feels like, this year, and that's not under their control. Like how emotional Stephanie White was after that game, I felt that. Like you feel for this team, I feel like, whether you're an Indiana fan or not, because like this could be your team. You know, it's not like a team that doesn't have title aspirations or like realistic title aspirations having all these injuries. You know, that's one thing, but like the Fever could have competed. And for a team that runs around the point guard position, that is built around Caitlin Clark and her talents, to not have her, but then to go without your next two point guards, like it's just brutal. Like it's just brutal, and you feel for them.
It's hard not to, right? Like you don't have to be a Fever fan or a Fever diehard to look at what they've been dealing with this season and just feel bad. Because it's nothing that anybody did wrong. It's not a misstep. It wasn't a bad evaluation. It wasn't a bad decision. It's just injuries happen and are an unfortunate part of sports. And sometimes they disproportionately affect some teams more than others. And that's what the Fever are dealing with now. And that's almost the frustrating thing is in sports, you want so badly to just blame someone for falling short of expectations, but there's no one to blame in this situation. And Stephanie White said they've got something inside of them that you just can't teach. And I think that has been proven by the way that they've been able to continue to respond to adversity. That even when Caitlin Clark was out, they were still able to win the Commissioner's Cup. Like they've continued to just answer every time they get smacked in the mouth. But at some point, there's just no more answers that you have. I think we might be there with the Fever.
So long ago.
Yeah, sorry, Cass, go ahead.
No, you're like that Commissioner's Cup feels so long ago. I do agree. I feel like we're there with the Fever. Like there is always a line in your life between an excuse and a reason, I think. I think this has become a reason. Mm-hmm. Like the Indiana Fever falling to 6th in the standings, potentially really like could fall out of the playoffs with as much movement as we've seen. Like Seattle is now sitting in 8th on the brink of a playoff spot. They were in 2nd or 3rd like 2 weeks ago. You know, them, if they do miss the playoffs, like the reason is just consistent, constant injuries, because it's not just to Caitlin Clark. Like you said, they were doing better. They were finding ways to win without Caitlin Clark. But now you wipe out all of their point guards. You take away Sophie Cunningham. You know, you have these little injuries elsewhere. It is just so hard to overcome that in a condensed season where also you don't have a lot of time to practice and get a player like Odyssey Sims up to full speed and working like she's been there since the training camp.
And I think in a weird way, this can make all of us feel even more optimistic about the Indiana Fever next year. Next year. Because if we've seen how they've been able to stick together and still find ways to win games, even when their roster just gets, riddled down, it feels like every single week, then that gives me optimism that if and when, knock on wood, they are all, fingers crossed, they are at full strength next year, then great. They're that much more poised and ready to go on a championship run because they've battled that adversity. There's not a single championship team in all of sports that hasn't been able to win a championship without a whole heck of a lot of adversity, whether it was that season or the years before. But now, Cass, I mean, that gives me excitement about the team next year. But now, this team this year, this 2025 version of the Indiana Fever, I don't think it's crazy to say that they could potentially miss out on the playoffs altogether.
Yeah, they could miss out on the playoffs. And I think it puts into even more context things like the Aces winning championships back to back, right? Or the Lynx and the Liberty playing in the finals last year and then continuing to win this year. Like championship windows are so fragile and so small. Like the thing about the Fever, if you do look ahead, is I think there's only 2 or 3 players technically under contract for next year because of how much the league is going to change. Like Indiana went all in because it made sense to go all in now when they had these players under contract and could bring them in. We don't know what next year is going to look like for anyone. And I think it's just another, like I said, great example of championship windows are so fragile. And if you're a sports fan, you appreciate them when they come around and when they are successful.
I think there have been so many dynasties in sports that have given us this mirage that winning championships is easy. Like
Yeah.
Tom Brady can do it 7 times. So can everybody else. And it's like, no. Just because Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes have had their dynasties and the Golden State Warriors had their dynasty and Alabama football had their dynasty. No. They are more the exception than it is the rule. We can apply that logic here too. And, looking at other sports the same way, that whenever you are in a championship window, when you fall short of that a lot of times there is somebody that has to answer to that. Somebody gets fired, that, there's something that you have to basically justify to the rest of the world, to the fan base, to the league, that we set these expectations, we fell short of them, and somebody has to pay for that. This Indiana Fever team, it's okay. If the Fever don't make the playoffs, it's okay. And that's crazy, because if I would have said that months ago, that would have sounded insane, because falling short of the playoffs would have been a massive disappointment for this team. But now, look, injuries happen. It stinks, and you want to have some sort of justification for it, but there's no justification for it other than, man, that's so incredibly unfortunate.